Hey everyone, my name is Penny Zanker, and it's time to reset. This podcast goes beyond just navigating change. It's about new ways of thinking about how you can approach challenges, how you can shift your mindset when needed, create some space and grace for yourself so that you can rethink, recharge, and reprioritize when and where needed. Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Thank you for hitting play and sharing this next episode with me. It's time to reset. Hello, and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zanker, and I'm your host. And I'm always excited to talk about ways for you to work smarter, not harder. And I'm always looking for different perspectives and different viewpoints on how you might look at doing that. And so today I have with me Mike Bosworth. He is well known throughout the business sales world, and he's also a thought leader, a speaker, a sales philosopher, an entrepreneur, and author of the best-selling sales books, Solution Selling, which was published by McGraw-Hill in 1993. And let's see, there's a lot more here. Also, he's published a new book, What's Great Salespeople Do. So that's what we want to hear a little bit about today, the science of scaling through emotional connection and the power of story. So this guy, he's got a lot going on. So without further ado, Mike, welcome to the show.
I'm happy to be here with you, Penny.
Fantastic. So your essence of, we're going to be talking about sales in productivity and how that can relate not only in sales, but across the board. What's got you interested in this area? Like, why sales productivity?
Well, back when I started solution selling in 1983, the issue I was trying to address back then was that in virtually all large organizations with a sales force, 80% of the business was brought in by 20% of the salespeople. And so my mission was, how do we lift the bottom 80%? Because the top 20% are doing great.
Right. We want to know what they're doing that works, right?
Yeah, right. And in 2008, I discovered that 80-20 rule had not gotten any better. And since it was my life's work, it was kind of like I got kicked in the chest. And I finally took a different look at the problem. And my new look was more emotional and tangible. But my opinion is that the reason the top 20% are the top 20% is they have an intuitive ability to connect with strangers and build trust with strangers quickly. And if
so you're saying nature versus nurture. So you're saying that some people just are better salespeople because they're born that way.
Well, they're born to be better connectors. And it's not just salespeople. If you look at all professions, doctors, professors, lawyers, politicians, the creme de la creme have this intuitive ability to connect with you and build trust with you.
Well, it sounds like the rest of us are screwed. Like, what do we do if we don't have this skill?
I'm glad you asked, because in 2008, I decided we have to figure out a way to teach the bottom 80% how to emotionally connect and build trust, even though they're not naturally good at doing it. And the vehicle is story. And two-legged creatures have been wandering this earth who speak orally for the last 200,000 years. And for the vast majority of that time, there was no written language. So everything we learned about tribal wisdom and food and spices and enemies and whatever came through oral stories.
Actually, not just oral stories, right? If you go back even further, this just triggered in my mind, right? And you go into the caves, you see stories that are drawn so that people follow it. So we are natural storytellers.
And so what happens is that when a human being anticipates a story, a couple of wonderful things happen if you're in sales. The first wonderful thing that happens is their critical left brain kind of shuts down, and their creative right brain, connected to their feelings and emotions and senses, opens up. And after 200,000 years, they intuitively say, oh, a story. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to make a decision. I can just enjoy it. Yet somewhere else in the back of their mind, they're saying, I probably should pay attention because this could be important information. Like, don't eat those red berries because your grandpa died eating those red berries, right? And so if you think about it, what a perfect state of mind for a message. And in selling to professionals, when I teach salespeople how to sell to business professionals, we're triggering on one, their love of story, two, how they react when they anticipate a story, and three, their natural, pure curiosity. And certainly in the business world, if you're an industrial engineer, and I said to you, Penny, oh, you're an industrial engineer. Can I share a quick story with you about another industrial engineer I've been working with for the past 2 years? The odds are you're going to say yes.
Right. Yeah.
And by that little offer of a pure story, now your brain is anticipating a pure story. Your left brain is shutting down, it's opening up. And you've now granted me about 60 seconds of story time. And if I can tell you what we call it, a customer hero story. So I'm going to tell you a story about that other industrial engineer I mentioned and what I knew about him, where his background, where he went to school, and then his or her struggle. She's really struggling these days to keep her management happy because A, B, and C. That's the struggle. And then the aha moment is when she discovered that our firm has specific capabilities for industrial engineers that allow them to do A, B, and C. A year and a half ago, she said, we're going to give it a go. And here we are today. Our inventories used to be this high, and now they're this high. Our past due backlog used to be this high, and now it's this low. But enough about me, what's going on around here? And in that 1 minute story, the intended buyer comes to a few emotional conclusions. The first emotional conclusion is, wow, even though this salesperson is 20 years younger than me, it sounds like she really understands how hard my job is. And it sounds like she has helped other industrial engineers with a problem I'm still wrestling with. And so my discovery resistance is down. And now when the seller says to me, what about you, Mike? What's going on? I'm ready to open up and share my problem. And if you're in sales, you don't really have a prospect until they trust you enough to share their problem. When you get called at night at home.
Let's say that again. Yeah. Say that again, because I think that's really, really valuable, because most people, especially today, are on high critical alert, right? Everybody's selling to them. They're bombarded with information. The last thing they want is another sales pitch. So I love that you're showing how the story is such a nice way to open up trust. So just repeat what you just said there, because I think it was really important.
Well, in my grading system, you don't go from a suspect to a real prospect until you trust me enough to share your problem with me.
Great.
And then again, I'm not a therapist, I'm a salesperson. So that means I've got to get you to admit a problem that is solvable with what I sell. And that's why the story focuses that. And that's why we do peer stories. And if the story is good, your initial pure curiosity, 60 seconds later, turns into pure envy. And pure envy is a wonderful emotional buying reason in the logical business world.
I love that. So you're taking them from pure curiosity to pure envy. I love that. Simple to understand. And the story is the vehicle that does that.
And they demonstrate it back to you, public display of trust, which is they now admit they have the same problem that the other industrial engineer you just told me about in your story has.
Yeah.
And so now I
can for them to open up and share the problem because you just shared a similar problem. So they can say, oh, I'm having that same problem. And then they're more apt to share that. And because they feel like you understand, like even if you don't understand, you're opening that door up to show that you do understand and that you guys are the experts.
Right. Yeah. And so my biggest frustration was solution selling over the years. Solution selling was designed to teach salespeople selling complex things how to do intelligent discovery. Because back then, when I started it, so many salespeople were making product promises to buyers that their product couldn't achieve.
It couldn't deliver. Right. It was always, I
Were,
remember the big gap between the salespeople and the operational people that had to deliver
yeah,
because there was,
yeah, yeah.
they were out of
And in
control,
my first two and a half years in the corporate world, I was cleaning up the messes and having to go out and reset those expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but here's what happened. After about twice a year, one of my vice president of sales clients over the years would say to me, 6 months after I did a solution selling workshop, they'd say, my Eagles, my top 20% love solution selling because now they're not making promises our product can't keep anymore. But the bottom 80% quit using it within 2 weeks of the workshop. In 2008, I finally figured out that the reason the bottom 80% quit using it is since they are not natural connectors, which 80% of population are not in all professions.
Right.
They're not natural connectors with strangers. They would pull out their expert discovery questions prematurely because they didn't really know how to warm the buyer up and build trust. So they started, let me ask you some questions about your industrial engineering challenges. What are your challenges? And the buyers are going, whoa, you don't know me well enough to ask me those questions.
Right.
And so the buyers would push them away. And after 2 weeks of that, they quit using solution selling. And so I would love to be able to go back and teach all those engineers and financial people and geeky IT people, people who just aren't, they're really smart, but they aren't by nature good connectors. I mean, look at a guy like Mark Zuckerberg. You know he's really smart, but he's not a great connector.
Right.
Right? Or Bill Gates, really smart, but not a great connector. And a lot of these high-tech companies, they hire engineers and scientists and really smart people, but they struggle with connection. Right. And story enables these people to follow a little process and a model to connect, even though it's not their nature.
Absolutely. And you know what's also great about story is that you also remember it for a long time afterwards. I went to what was it called? Like a BNI group, one of those networking groups, like 15 years ago. And I remember one of the insurance people started with a story about his friend who had someone come up and got bitten by their dog, right? And so I remembered like that story. And this was 15 years ago, right? So people, I don't know why I remember it, but I just do. So that's also
you're using more of your whole brain. The story is relating to emotions and feelings and empathy, and you can put yourself in that person's shoes, where if you're just reciting facts or features, people don't have any memory for that.
Yeah, I mean, I have a dog, right? So it connected to things that people can relate with, where you could go, oh, I wouldn't want that to be me, that I got sued because my dog, but so I think that's also a really important thing, is that people remember it behind the meeting. So if you're at a networking type of thing, if you share a quick story, and this is how, we help people like you, people will remember that a lot more than you standing up and doing your little pitch or whatever it is. So
exactly.
It's powerful. One other connection that I want to make before we go further is that a lot of people listening might not be in sales. And I think it's important that they make the connection that leadership, parenting, no matter what it is that we do, we need to make connection in everything that we do, right?
In everything we do.
Influence people. So these stories are so powerful in every area of our life. So I just want anybody who's listening who goes, I'm not in sales. It doesn't matter, right? This simple method is a great way just to create that connection.
Another connection lesson that one of my mentors at Xerox years ago, I'm going to tell you a quick story about. He went to Northwestern and he majored in psychology. And he was a pretty geeky looking guy. His hair looked like a toupee. His natural mouth was downturned, and he had these glasses on. He looked like a real geek. And he did experiments with connecting with strangers at school events. He had 5 children. So multiple times a year, He was in a room full of other parents for a fundraiser or back to school night or whatever. Initially, he'd go around and he'd be listening. And they're all having a who's got the coolest kid contest. Well, mine got into Johns Hopkins and is going to major in pre-med. And mine's going to play rugby at, George Washington. And mine's doing this and mine's doing that. And so Bob would go up to these strangers and he'd stick his hand out and say, my name's Bob and I've got 5 kids, one of each. And a lot of cases that would go over their head. So he knew probably a little bit diminished capacity, but he'd say, my first 4 are doing great. 2 are out of college. They have great jobs. The next 2 are in school. One's in debate and one's doing student leadership. But my number 5 is breaking my heart. Last Saturday, she got picked up for shoplifting. And I think I'm going to have to put her in rehab. Now, what do you think happened when Bob did that?
I don't know. It sounds like, whoa, TMI.
No, they'd come back and say, I got one of those too.
Uh-huh.
So in order to really connect, if you're in sales or if you're in leadership and you really want to connect with the other person, if you're vulnerable first, there's a principle of emotional reciprocity.
Right.
And they will come back and be vulnerable with you. And that's
I agree with that, but I do think there's also sharing too much too quickly. That if you haven't had any conversation, you just randomly walk up to someone, I think that it could go in a different direction as well, right?
It could, but he did tell him about his first 4 successful ones first.
Right.
Which is matching what everybody's talking about.
True. Right. Yeah. So you're leading people a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And the stuff he told them about the shoplifting and stuff wasn't even true. He was just doing it as an experiment.
Sure. I get it. That's like, the experiment with the people who are lined up at the Xerox machine and somebody asked, can I cut in? Right. And most people said no, unless they said, can I cut in because, and it didn't matter whether they said because my pants are on fire, but we're up to let them in just because of that critical word.
They gave a reason. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting, right? This is all psychology. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. All psychology. Yep. And so as leaders in corporate America, the biggest obstructor to leadership, in my opinion, is that so many of them came out of military academy, West Point or the Naval Academy or whatever, and they are used to having leaders be didactic and give orders, and everybody goes and does what they want to do. But non-didactic leaders learn how to lead with stories about our mission, stories about why we decided to go into this business, stories about people we've been helping. And the best leaders are also great storytellers, and they get their followers to volunteer to follow them instead of being little corporate soldiers following orders.
Yeah, absolutely. Inspire people to action, not require them to action.
Inspire instead of require. Ooh, I should write that down.
You can quote me. That's Penny Zanker.
All right. Have you said that one before, or did you?
No, I just said it now.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
No.
Words are free. Words are free.
Your next keynote, you could do that. That could be your title for a keynote.
I will write it down in case I want to say it again. But some of the best things come out when you're just like shooting the breeze, right?
Yeah.
For sure. Well, what didn't I ask you yet that you think is critical for our audience to know? Because we're coming to the end of our time.
Well, the one thing I wanted to mention about productivity in salespeople is the thing that salespeople hate the most is prospecting. And that's because most of them aren't very good at connecting with strangers. And so I call it rejection avoidance. And so they try to look busy doing other things. So their boss can't say, you should have made at least 5 outgoing cold calls today, because they're avoiding the rejection because they don't really know how to do it. And again, story helps prospecting too, because, now with AI, if I know that there's a certain type of corporate buyer out there that's got a certain pain that my product really alleviates, I can get AI to go find them and say, would you like to hear a story about another industrial engineer who was able to solve this problem? And So the AI is now taking some of the prospecting off their shoulders.
Absolutely. Right? It's incredible. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to be more productive, and there's a lot of productivity in the story, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
How do people get more information about you and what you're doing now?
The easiest thing is I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I'll be happy to connect with you on either. And what I've been sending people who connect with me is a link to a private AI. About 4 months ago, I got approached by a private AI company. I didn't know what it was, but we've ended up loading into my private AI all three of my books, all my white papers, my TED Talk, some of my videos, and you can ask that Mike Bosworth private AI any question about leadership or sales or marketing that you could ask me as a human being.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. So we'll have all of those links in the show notes so everybody can just quickly link to that. So thank you so much for being here, Mike.
Thank you, Penny. I enjoyed it.
Me too. And I hope you all enjoyed it. And I hope that, I've been talking a lot about the reset mindset. And I think that in today's day and age where things are moving quickly, Mike mentioned AI, that there's a lot of changes, and the way that people buy is different. The way that we connect is different. And so I want you to engage your reset mindset to reset the way that we sell, reset the way that we connect. And even though this isn't new, applying it in this way and using these principles of using story to lead, using story to inspire people instead of requiring them. As I said earlier, this is a way to really reset your leadership and your sales mindset so that you can connect deeper, that people remember you longer, and you'll be more productive. So that's hopefully what you learned in today's session. Go and click on Mike's links and find that information. Ask his bot anything that you want, see what comes out. And as always, we'll see you in the next episode. My name is Penny Zanker, and I'm your host. I'll see you then. Hey, thank you for spending this time with me. It really means a lot. If you're feeling a little off, distracted, overwhelmed, stuck, or just out of sync, remember that's your signal to reset. And that's all it takes, just recognizing one reset moment at a time. So stay tuned for more tips, tools, tricks, stories, strategies, all here on Time to Reset. We'll see you in the next episode.